Welcome to Intersections, where faith, ideas, and life meet. Today we're talking about humor. The title of our program is Humor. Where's your sense of it? When I think about humor, I think about this past Christmas where I went with a friend to a wonderful Christmas concert. And there was a lot of pageantry around the three wise men as they came in with all of their robes and everything. And then there was an intermission, at which point they changed the stage and out came the little manger and a light bulb that was supposed to represent Jesus. And I remember leaning forward, looking at the scene because it had so different than the scene before it. The person with me leaned over and then said, "Where's baby Jesus?" Now, for a reason that I can't explain, is that it made me laugh. And I started to laugh a little, and then a little more, and then a little more, until I was almost shaking. And then my laughter created laughter in the person next to me, and he was shaking. And the two of us together were laughing so hard under our breath. And you know, as you try to keep it in, you laugh more until tears began to stream down my face. And I thought, at any moment now, I'm going to have to excuse myself. It raised all kinds of questions about why was it that made me laugh? At these odd times, it raised questions of the use of laughter in the context of in a Christian context or a religious context. So our title of our program today again is Humor. Where's your sense of it?
So what was funny about it?
Well, see, that's just the thing, Julius. Even now I can't say. All I know is that we weren't supposed to laugh.
That's what made it funny.
Is that it?
Yeah, what you do is you're not supposed to laugh. You try and hold it in. The more you hold it in, eventually it just erupts, and it's contagious, impacts everyone else. I was in church once, and the pastor was preaching very loudly, and the person next to me just said, "Does he think God is hard of hearing?" and all of a sudden, I just hysterically started, I tried to keep it in, and then as they went to were laughing, tell everyone, and all of a sudden, this domino effect, it's avalanching all the way back there, and the poor pastor had no idea what was going on.
Well, my father's a pastor, so my sister and I would sit there. And we would try to make him laugh. So we would make faces at him. We would do all kinds of things, and we weren't 10, we were teenagers, so we would do all these things. Yes, very mature. And so he would start laughing, and he got in big trouble with the organist, who thought he was laughing at the way she played the organ. So there was this huge controversy in the church because the organist just couldn't believe that he was laughing at his daughter. She thought she had misplayed a note, and he had noticed.
Did you get grounded afterwards?
Absolutely. Oh, you know she did. Yeah, she did.
Actually, you know, as my parents are strict for that, they just laughed about it. So.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah.
Did you try to make your father laugh the following subsequent
Yes!
weeks? Did you do it?
My mother would also draw pictures on. We were a very bad family.
Bad in the good sense of the word.
Yes.
Yes.
But not a typical pastor.
What was the point, though, of wanting to make your dad laugh?
On the sacred occasion.
Maliciousness.
Perhaps maliciousness, but also there's something so serious and solemn about a church service, and this idea that joy entering into it. I don't know. Seeing my father, who's normally very lighthearted, standing up, looking a bit like a stuffed frog, it was just very funny to my sister and I.
So it's contradictory, because when you laughed at the pageantry that you were seeing, we know that the light bulb represented the light of the world.
Well, but I just realized what was so funny is that there was so much seriousness. I needed joy. I needed a break with all the seriousness to smile or sing hallelujah or something. And when the occasion came, because it got worse, because as the person was leaning down to light the light that was supposed to spread all the thing, he didn't know his microphone was on. And he said, "I can't get it to light." I can't get it. He said it twice. "I can't get it to light." It went through. You could hear him throughout the whole auditorium. And many people did not laugh, but I think I needed to laugh to
So you're
break.
looking for a reason to laugh.
I didn't know it at the
Lily
time.
asked a good question talking about laughter. You know, 30 years ago, there was no laughter in church. In the last 15 years or so, pastors are using a lot more humor. There seems to be a transformation evolving from using humor in sermons in the last 20, 30 years.
Do you think that's good, though? Do you think?
I think so.
But what if you're a pastor who's not funny? And there's all this pressure that you must use humor in your sermon.
Then you just get your daughters to make fun of you.
From the front.
Well, even the most dry pastor can tell a joke and be funny. I use humor in my classes. I use it because I want to see if students are listening. I will tell a joke, and if there's laughter, I'll know they're listening. And then if no one's laughing after a joke, I assume no one's listening, and I call a break. And I used to do that for years, and then one of the students said, "We are listening the whole time. Your jokes just aren't funny." And
so now what do you use?
Well, I now go back to tests to assess whether they are
so much for laughter.
Laughter is not a good way to assess it, you know. Yes,
Okay.
we have different sense of humor.
Yeah.
Here's my question is, why did we all wear black today? Is there some...
You know what, I got this email and it said what you're supposed to wear. It said not to wear white, and I'm thinking, don't wear white, wear something dark. And
Here we are.
Here I am. So I was following this email out that was sent to me on what to wear. Yeah. It said not to wear earrings too, so I left those at home. So.
Okay, that's good. Well, I heard somewhere that humor is triggered by humor is triggered by incongruence in life. You know,
you expect one thing and
right.
another thing
so
happens.
Maybe we were trying to subconsciously create that, dress up seriously so we can make people laugh.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Maybe. But
Is that how they define humor?
yeah, how do we define humor?
I don't know how they do it, but that's what I heard.
They asked me how you define humor. I don't know how to define it, but I know it when I see it.
And like, where is it?
I don't know, it just sneaks up on you. And when I start to laugh, I will see humor in places I probably shouldn't be seeing it.
Yeah.
You teach humor, Sari. What are the elements of humor that you've noticed?
Well, written humor is quite different than oral humor. So written humor rests more on word choice, tone, whereas if you watch movies or TV, they often rest on situational humor. So a big thing that I always try to encourage my students to do is to get into the voice, because humor is going to come through your voice rather than the pieces that generally are less work on the written page is someone dresses up in a bear suit and scares someone else.
You're saying
you
that
can
doesn't work.
No, you can see how it would work on a TV show, perhaps, but on the written page it just but on the written page it just doesn't work. So I try to get my students to come up with a tone and be very observational. Observational humor is, as you were saying earlier, it's really kind of noticing what one expects and then what doesn't end up happening.
No, I would define humor as tragedy plus time. You think about things at the time or seem tragic in nature. As time evolves, you look back, reflect upon it, it becomes humorous. If something bad happens to a friend of yours, you laugh. It's funnier sooner than it is if it happens to you. Some things never become funny.
It's also a way of coping with tragedy.
Oh, yes. Humor
Yes.
is a coping, yeah.
Yeah, I very often will say that to myself. I know that within a week or two or a month or a year, this is going to be funny, but it's not right. It's not right now.
When's it going to be? You're talking about health reasons.
I used to send out emails to people, like before blogging, where I'd send out a story email to a bunch of people who probably didn't want to read it. And when
I think I got a forward from a friend of yours a while back.
When bad things happen, I would think, how can I write this in a way that's funny?
Yes,
and it made it easier for me when I would get food poisoning. I'd think, okay, I'm going to write it this way.
Yeah.
Well, the health benefits of humor are well documented. Sure. In fact, you go back a few thousand years ago, you had the Greeks, the theaters would be next to hospitals. They would have people from the hospital go over to watch the Greek plays because it was a way to be entertained. They'd feel healthier.
Yeah.
Proverbs talks about merry heart, and of course there can be various causes of merry heart, but clearly one of them is laughter and humor. I like puns. You guys, Carla and Lee, you know this. For example, the word humor, to be, especially when I'm teaching, I would sort of go off on a tangent. If we're talking about humor, and suddenly start talking about being human. To be human is to be humorous, and then, but if you're not humble as you, it's not funny.
It's funny to someone.
And then I say, oh, I love hummus.
Someone loves that.
Yeah, there's someone out there that will find that humorous.
Yeah.
No, but puns are
Often not in my classes, though.
very specific type of humor. In fact, as I understand it, you have to be fairly intelligent to even come up with puns.
That.
So see, this must be a measure.
And you have to be brave.
You talk about humor. I think a lot of it may be a form of sucking up. My father was a university president for several years. He told jokes, and it was very humorous, and he became a professor, retired afterwards, and his jokes weren't nearly as funny when he was no longer president. And I'm wondering, what % of the humor out there is just sucking up?
Laughing because you
Did
should.
have a rule that if you didn't laugh, you got fired?
I don't know if that was the case or not. But I don't know if he got fired, but it would make someone feel more supportive.
I'm kidding, but sometimes,
No, that's true. Maybe not fired, but maybe a promotion. Yeah.
Or if it's a child or someone who is sort of socially awkward, you laugh to encourage, to affirm, because
Yeah,
you feel
because we all
bad.
laugh at not jokes, and we really are kind of tired of them.
Or we just, if we have a random conversation, hi, how are you? If you listen to people, they're laughing even though nothing funny is exchanged, because it's a matter of saying, I'm glad to see you and I'm actually listening to you, and it's a friendlier face. Because listen to the conversations. People laugh and they're not telling any jokes or trying to be funny.
Laughter and humor. I have been hysterically entertained watching television and not laughing out loud. I'm just inside entertained. So just because you are humor does not necessarily mean that you're laughing.
Okay, are we talking about American humor now? Because a lot of our audiences are all around the
Sari
world.
loves British humor.
Oh, the British humor.
There's different types of humor too. Korean humor, how's it different? What would Korean people think is funny?
Well, you just said you like puns, though.
I
That's
like
not
puns.
necessarily Korean.
Well, you can do puns in any language, I would think.
I think ethnicity impacts humor. And I think, I wonder
Clearly.
2,000 years ago, what they thought was funny back then is funny today.
Yeah.
In different parts of the world. So as our humor has been evolving over time, you look at old pictures and they all look very serious.
Yeah.
I thought, these guys never had fun. Then they told me, well, you had to sit for a picture for so long, you didn't want to smile because you couldn't hold a smile.
right.
So they're always like this serious look in these pictures. So,
Whatever you could hold for a while.
Yeah, but they were actually having fun back then more so.
So
That's
we
what
have
it's funny.
puns. What is yours, Sari? What is your...
I like self-deprecating humor, but I also like understatements.
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 Like British humor?
Yeah,
British
yeah.
humor?
P.G. Woodhouse is...
Yeah,
is
P.G.
one of them.
Woodhouse.
Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Bean. Well, that's good because
won't
there's no
illustrate.
translation. It's consistent. Yeah.
But Mr. Bean's more overstatement.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
way over.
Yeah. It's interesting, growing up in Papua New Guinea.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, that's where I spent my childhood years. It was interesting how, in the culture that I grew up in, people would laugh at somebody's misfortune. Like there'd be somebody getting on a tractor trailer and they'd fall off.
That's what I told you. Humor is tragedy plus time. If it happened to someone else, it's funny.
Everybody would laugh at him.
Yeah.
Was he falling off on purpose?
No, it was actually
I don't think that's unique to Papua New Guinea, though.
The Australian humor is different. It's down under.
This is
No, our family was like that. And I remember in our family, we're laughing just basically all the time. And I remember telling my friends before they came over the house, just saying, you know what, we laugh all the time. You might expect someone to throw you a pancake, and if you don't catch it, we'll laugh. And so don't worry. It's not you. It's just the way we are.
So you like sight
prepare
gags?
them.
You like sight gags? You like slapstick? That's what's funny to
Not
you?
slapstick. No, I like self-deprecating humor. But I had a friend once that actually told me that she was offended by my laughter because I laugh a lot at myself and I would laugh at other people.
Did she know you're laughing
And
at yourself?
Yes, she knew, and she said, but when you're laughing when I do something, it's hard for me to believe that it's not out of, laughing at me. And I had to really curb.
Did she know who you were? Did you know that you're a joyous
Was
person?
she a
laughing
friend
at
of
everything?
yours?
She wasn't a close friend.
What is her name? There's only a few thousand people who are listening.
She had a
I actually
friend.
prefer satire. I watch The Daily Show and Stephen Colbert Report. I find those slapstick is too violent, sarcasm seems negative, and clowns, they scare me.
They're creepy.
Clowns are creepy. I grew up in Texas. I used to go to the rodeo. I would cheer for the bulls to take out the rodeo clowns.
Okay, now that's
Do I need help?
creepy. You need
I need therapy. Lee,
someone
you
that
get
tries
therapist
to
that
kill
come on?
clowns?
No, not
Are
just
you
go
kidding
after
me?
them. They're frowning upside down, and they're white pasties in the big feet.
Exaggerated features,
Yeah.
funny nose.
Yeah, it's
Actually, it's one of the, what is it, the 5 most scary things to children?
clowns.
I believe
Number
Yeah.
one.
Is it number 1?
For me growing up, I was afraid to go to the circus. I'm not sure. It might
How are
have
you
been
doing now?
I'm okay with it. After a few years of therapy, I've been able to.
Hey, I got a
actually-
question for you. In the world, a lot of humor revolves around sex.
Does it?
Okay, there was a bit of empty space.
Let me see. Who's going to
Are we
answer that
getting
question?
too uncomfortable here?
No.
Is there an appropriate Christian humor that references sex? I mean, sex.
I don't know. I remember as a kid growing up reading Song of Songs and not being able to keep a straight face. And then the pastor explained
That's pretty
to me,
risque when you think about it.
As a kid, it was a laughter of uncomfortableness. And then the pastor explained to me that it wasn't about another woman, it was about God's love for us. So then it was okay.
Yeah. But it's really talking also about human erotic
Anatomy.
sexual.
It's talking about human anatomy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There probably should. I'm not sure that should be probably PG-13.
Well, if you're talking about sexual connotations in public, the use of the class in the classroom, all that's one thing. But I'd like to
Is there a
address.
place for it? I'm asking. Yeah.
Well, certainly there's a place for it in your relationships. And if I can just tell a story here, I hadn't thought about this ahead, but I think it's okay.
Oh, watch out.
Where I've had several people tell me that something in a relationship that's more sexual, like. I hate it when he nibbles on my ear. And how long has he been doing that? Oh, about 20 years now. Well, that's...
Did you like it at first?
Never did.
Never did?
Never did.
Well,
So you wish that in relationships, in relation to sex, you could laugh at some things and say, you know, it may seem kind of strange, but it's not what is helpful to me. But we're not able to laugh.
Well, part of the challenge is we live in such a sexualized culture.
Right.
And most of the culture that is sexualized is perverse in one way or the other. But there is a healthy form. But the main, you know, I think a lot of us struggle with that. What is a healthy form? Is it
Healthy
private?
form of
being able to laugh at sexuality. But is it private? Like, you know, between husband and wife, that sort of thing.
But even if it is private, could you laugh at it?
amongst your husband and wife, maybe.
Amongst
yeah.
your, yeah.
You don't want to take it in a show like this.
Or is that what you were asking in a public forum?
Well, I don't know exactly what I was asking, but well, we talk very positively about. We've been talking very positively about humor, but I guess what I'm asking, in a more academic way, is to ask about the limits of that and boundaries. Yeah.
Well, sometimes people use humor as a way of avoiding answering the big question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, do you love me or something?
Yes.
Early on in a relationship, once you've been together, but sometimes you can use humor to change the subject and go a different direction to avoid that.
Absolutely.
So,
or
what kind of biblical principles could one use in guiding humor? You know, in terms of the topic here. I mean.
So now you really want to get serious.
Well,
this is an uncomfortable laugh right here.
but see, what happens is we laugh sometimes as displacement activity too.
Yeah.
Yes. Or it replacing something that we don't have, like going back to the whole idea of a sermon. I think very often people will use a joke within a sermon when they don't have other stuff, or when they want to recapture the audience attention. And you have to ask yourself, is that what it should be used for, especially in that setting?
I will see pastors, they will have 2 or 3 funny jokes. They will do a whole sermon based around those jokes because they want to tell those jokes. It's like
exactly.
It's so
I have a joke. How can I tell the sermon around it? Not good.
Well, unless the joke is very good.
Okay.
So I think it's easy.
Well, you only laugh when things aren't supposed to be funny, when you're not supposed to.
But theologically, shouldn't the main point be the point itself? And the humor is to augment
church.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
so there's a difference between levity and serious laughter. For instance, church is about worshiping God. That's how I take it anyway.
Right.
We go to church to worship.
But there are instances of laughter in Scripture that are very deeply
but is it
theological.
detracting from our relationship with the Lord? Right. Is it distracting from the worship?
It may be enhancing it, depends on the humor.
Yeah.
For some people, I think it would be enhancing. Other people, it would be a detractor.
That's right.
Hopefully, the first thing you do when you speak is to know your audience. If you feel the humor is not going to be appreciated, then boy, by all means, pull it out.
Or if it's detracting from the message. I mean, we all know that Sarah laughed when she, at the thought of having a baby.
80-year-old woman having a baby, and not only having a baby, but her descendants would be like the stars in the sand in the sky.
Exactly. So she wasn't laughing to augment.
But was God being funny there? Maybe God was being funny, looking at a situation. I'm going to take this unusual situation, and I'm going to basically populate the earth, and maybe it was...
Except wasn't she punished for laughing?
Oh, well, maybe not then.
Well,
I think you know the scripture better than I do.
Rebuke, yes. I don't know about punish.
Let me go back and read Genesis there again. Genesis.
No, but
so laughing would be disrespectful then from Sarah's.
But certainly God would have known that it was a unusual, even funny situation.
But are there really good biblical examples that show us how we can be funny and what the positive use of laughter? I'm straining.
Well, if you go back and look at the Bible, different translations, a lot of the analogies were actually puns in nature. But what's happened with the translation over time, we've actually lost those sense of humor. So it's very, the British, pardon me, the sense of humor is not that great, but their sense of humor was very stoic and static, and it wasn't originally written in that particular language, and we've lost a lot of the true meaning. And Lee's probably more of a scholar than I am on that. He can probably.
It's cultural too, isn't it? Because it was
Yes.
around the time of Christ, so I imagine different things were funny back then.
Maybe slapstick was fun. Maybe clowns were funny back then.
What I do appreciate about humor in the Christian setting is that it highlights, we talked about incongruence. It highlights the incongruence of life used in an appropriate way, at least what I consider to be appropriate. It reminds us of our humanity. That we can't be so serious about everything.
And it builds connections and breaks down barriers by talk about self-depreciating humor. I mean, basically making fun of yourself makes yourself more vulnerable. You can connect with other people.
Yeah.
And somebody said it lubricates tense situations.
Yeah.
I was going out with this girl, and I was trying to impress her parents by telling jokes, and they're always laughing. And I said, hey, I think your parents really like me. They go, why? They go, well, they always laugh. And she goes, my parents don't speak English. I guess they were
being polite.
Yeah, they were just being polite. No habla English. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe
Don't like you.
Maybe I wasn't so funny after all. So anyway, know your audience again, I think.
But they still might have liked you because they were laughing. Versus...
Maybe they were laughing at me, and I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
The Italians seem to use a lot of hand motions. I'm not sure why that is.
Yeah.
It also seems like you feel closer to people that you can laugh with. You know, you share well, there's two things that I find. You share a sad moment or you share a funny moment, and you don't forget those people.
That's
I don't
true.
know
Yeah,
why.
That's true. There is a
It's a
bond that comes
bonding.
together. Tragic experiences and humor bring people together.
They really do.
It's interesting. I know, Carla, you've done this in patient care, but at a bedside where somebody's just died, and there'll be a family there. Some are crying, some are somber, some are smiling, and some are laughing. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
So what's going on here? Why are the ones who are laughing? Why are they laughing? They're being disrespectful, or they're laughing at joyous memories?
I think there's several things going on. Probably part of that is coping, but I think especially during memorial services, and I think this is a bit cultural too. When I go to a Korean funeral service, it's far more somber, at least the way we would interpret it, less laughter. But when I go to more Western memorial services, there's more laughter, anecdotes that point out the silliness, the lighter moments of that person's life, and that's, I think, a more Western probably way of celebrating the person's life.
Yeah.
So in that sense, humor, I think, is appropriate if it highlights what this person was about, even at a time of tragedy. Yeah.
You talk about humor, it seems to be a function of age. As I've gotten older, what I thought was funny hasn't been funny has changed. Gender, ethnicity over time. 2,000 years ago, what was funny now is funny now. So it seems to be like an evolving trend, the levels of humor.
I was listening to NPR about Charlie Chaplin as I was driving over here, and what they said is that no matter who they showed the Charlie Chaplin films to, people laughed. The Charlie Chaplin films were universal, but that was back in, but that was back in the day. So I'm wondering, now are they universal?
But that was the only form of comedy back then. So
Right.
now we have
Yeah.
But they
Mostly
crossing cultural bounds. They went to different countries where people had never seen TV before, and they showed
That makes sense to me,
our
though, because
movies.
Charlie Chaplin
very physical.
was very physical. No, it's not Charlie Chaplin. Is it slapstick? I'm not real.
physical sight gags. You know what? I haven't studied humor. I am not an expert,
I was
which is
gonna
why
ask
I'm
you-
here.
It is
I'm
physical,
trying to
quite
learn.
physical.
Very physical.
Yeah, but
and
it's
very,
also universal.
Very. It's a kind humor.
It is.
In other words, it was about life and people and
Sweetness.
in a sense.
And he's the dumb guy, usually.
And he's the dumb.
Let me ask this question.
Although very smart.
I'm going to change it a little bit, but can humor ever get in the way of intimacy?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You know, how? How would it get in the way of
For
intimacy?
one, people use humor to avoid intimacy.
Okay.
They compartmentally, they use humor. They don't want to be serious about certain things. They're not ready for it, so they will use it. So
they'll
obviously
laugh.
there. Yeah.
So this guy asks a pretty girl out and she laughs at him.
And that can be so hurtful. Okay. Now that leads over into can humor hurt? I think
Most
humor
definitely,
can be very
especially if it's at your
Is
expense.
she laughing because she's excited about the opportunity, or is she laughing and think, you're kidding, he thinks I would actually go out with him? Oh, that's the situation.
Or
Oh,
is
that's
she
it.
laughing because she's nervous?
Or maybe she's excited.
But the fact that he doesn't know which of those it is can be difficult.
But he's going to find out in about 5 seconds.
Is this from personal experience, Lee?
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Stop now.
Tragedy over time is funny.
Well, just do what other people do. Just wait till she asks you out.
Right.
And then you can laugh at her.
Hey, I'm happily married, but I'm just thinking.
Are you doing a show on romance coming up? Maybe that might be.
But when we look at intimacy, you know, intimacy can be intense.
Very
You know, and so sometimes not, you know, people are done with being intense. It's like you know, you need to come up for air, and that's where the humor can come in, right? I mean,
But it also can help, like we were saying earlier, help decrease tension. So you've got, I'm thinking of something that happened yesterday. You have a tense situation going, and if one or both can say, okay, you know, let's just leave this, or inject some humor that is humorous to both, it can really be helpful.
Yeah.
But if it's the wrong kind of humor in a situation where you're not ready to be humorous, it can really make it worse.
You talked about humor being a lubricant. I mean, if you have too much engine oil in the car, you drown in it, and it doesn't start, doesn't go anywhere. And of course, if you don't have enough of it, burns. So maybe
that's an important
it's a
part
nice
of life.
principle to enunciate.
Speaking of principles, are there, you asked earlier if there were biblical principles.
Yeah.
Are there biblical principles that you would use to guide humor? Okay.
All right, we have 30 seconds.
And more uncomfortable laughter I can see there.
Well, I think of Philippians. Is it Philippians where it talks about, you know, whatsoever is noble, pure, what else is there?
Think on these things.
Think on these things.
Lovely, kind,
lovely, kind.
true.
Yes. So you know that's a kind of overarching principle for every part of life. But I think we can make fun of, but it's something that we need to. I need to watch out for because it can hurt.
Well,
quite
you know,
easily.
the thing is, you cross this line. Each person has a different line from which to cross where they
That's
find
right.
it offensive. And depending on where that is, it's difficult to know until sometimes it's too late.
And is it appropriate to ask someone where you've said something and then to ask, you know, was that okay, or was that funny to you?
But then it's too late if you're already...
But then it's too late.
If you ask them beforehand, it's not going to be funny because you're setting up parameters. There's a joke coming, I hope it doesn't offend you. At this point, you've put them... The surprise element is gone.
Well, obviously, this is a difficult topic to wrap up. It's very open-ended, but I think as we look at intersections where faith, life, and ideas meet, we wish you God's blessing.